Welcome to Recruiting is No Joke. I am your host, Joel Lalgee, the realist recruiter. Guys, this is a special episode. As many of you guys will know, I was recently at RecFest USA that was in Nashville. Shout out to the RecFest USA team. I got the opportunity to work with a company called Built In, and we hosted some live interviews from their booth live at RecFest USA. So the next two episodes of the podcast are dedicated to those interviews. The first set of interviews that I had were with, and this episode, were with Maria Katris, who is the CEO of Built In and the CEO and founder. And then we had Tannum Sullivan from Golden Hippo, and we had Celinda Appleby from Visa. And this whole episode is around employer branding, how to market opportunities to candidates, and really just looking at like, what do candidates look for in new positions. I am super excited. These interviews were live, and each interview was about 15 to 20 minutes. So super excited for this. As always, if you've got comments, questions on the podcast, get a hold of me. Go to www.therealistrecruiter.com and you can sign up for my newsletter, and we're able to communicate that way. But special shout out to Built In. If you guys are looking to hire top tech talent, you've got to check out Built In. If you're looking for tech opportunities, go to builtin.com. Fantastic company, fantastic mission, and highly recommend. So enjoy this episode, and we'll see you next week with part 2. Welcome to Recruiting is No Joke Live. We are here from RecFest USA in Nashville. Super excited to be here. This is year 2. It has been a ton of fun already. I want to give a huge shout out to Built In for hosting these sessions. We've had some amazing conversations. I have learned a lot, and I am delighted to have Maria from Built In. So Maria, why don't you tell us who you are and what you do?
Hi everyone, I'm Maria Katris. I'm one of the co-founders and CEO of Built In. We're a global recruitment platform for tech professionals, work with the startups all the way to the Fortune 500. We really help brand them as an employer of choice so that they can attract and drive in the highest quality tech talent.
Well, you were sharing earlier about one of my favorite subjects, and we were even discussing a little bit offline. Recruitment is marketing. So like, walk me through this. Like, what does that mean? You know, how long have you been seeing this trend for?
So taking a step back, right? Every 10 to 15 years, the recruitment industry has changed, right?
Yeah.
So we started with the job board era, then we went to the sourcing era, and now it's the recruitment marketing era. And what's driving this is the proliferation of social media and influencer marketing, right?
Yeah.
What we're seeing is job seekers are looking to connect with companies the same way we're looking to connect with brands, the way we purchase things, the way we book hotels and restaurant reservations, right? And so what you're seeing is candidate behavior evolve as a result of that. And so, you know, I think you heard it today and I spoke about it today, but, you know, the analogy I love to use is like booking a hotel, right? You start with a Google search, but that's not really where you started your search. That's like when you're ready to book your hotel and get to the bottom. So you're like mid to late funnel. For years in advance, a year prior, you're like taking screenshots of your Instagram feed. Your friends tell you about a hotel brand. You're getting some ads, right, wherever you look and are. And so you're already have some awareness of where you want to go, but then when you want to make the decision, there's a very finite period of time, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever it is. And then you start researching across all these channels, but then ultimately where you book the hotel, it depends on you. For me, it might be Amex because I get insurance and it's my credit card that I use, right? For someone else, it might be bookings.com. For someone else, it might be, a different site. So that hotel, if they actually determine their brand spend and they're, on where someone booked the hotel, they'd be in big trouble because Amex had no bearing on why I chose that hotel. I just happened to use Amex to book it, right? Well, recruiters have to shift their mindset this way, right? A candidate is going to build their awareness about your company based on if you are where they are in any given month, right? Yeah. They may not be actively job seeking, but like you need to be present where they are, where they're reading content, where they're doing their day-to-day activities. Because when an active tech professional is actively looking to switch jobs, they're on the market for an average of 10 days. If they have no awareness that you exist, like 46%, I believe, of tech professionals say they won't even consider the company or responding to a recruiter's email. And so the challenge is, though, recruiting teams are still looking at last touch attribution and like where the person applied when they try to see ROI. And that's the mindset we need to shift in the space, because if you did that, you would be like, oh, well, more than 50% come to my career site and you wouldn't invest in any channels. Well, then you'd be in big trouble, because there is something driving traffic to your career site. You have to invest in that brand side. And so we're seeing this big shift in recruitment becoming marketing. It is marketing. However, not all TA teams have adopted this and aren't all looking at recruitment like marketing, and we're not measuring multi-touch attribution. And so we're still talking about ATS source of hires, and that's hurting TA teams in getting budgets they need to act like marketers.
You know, with talent leaders, how should they be preparing, and like how would you, I guess, coach a talent leader to start? Because it sounds like it's a mindset.
Yeah.
A lot about mindset. So like, how do you start to develop that mindset and almost shift away from recruiting as almost like transactional sales in a moment to, okay, I'm building a brand. I got to treat this like you said. I've got to market more than when you're just looking for a job. So like, how do you kind of get people to switch that mindset?
It's a mindset shift, right? It's a measurement shift. Like, how are we looking at the analytics? We all need to agree that ATS's source of hire is not how you measure ROI of your recruitment efforts, right? And we need to look at the data, right? Like, we see data that says candidates won't respond to your emails if they don't even have some awareness of your company. Ashby came out with another report after our report was released, and they now are saying the most outbound sourcing effort is going towards the hardest to fill tech roles, yet the response rates are the lowest among all roles. So why are we having this hesitation and this reluctance to switch strategies? Now, we work with some customers who are fully on like forward thinking. They've cut, their recruiter licenses. They're not sourcing at all anymore, and they're going all in on employer branding to drive inbound. But then we also have customers who are like, we're getting so much inbound right now, and they're not differentiating between role types. You might be getting, it's an and statement. You might be getting more inbound than you ever have, and for the hardest to fill roles, you're still struggling. And so you have to really focus differently on your hardest to fill roles versus the high volume, large inbound where you're getting tons of talent, right? And so, yes, it's a mindset shift, then it's a measurement. Like, are you looking at Google Analytics? Do you know where people are coming from when they land on your career site? Are you leveraging pixels to actually track where people are coming, right? So until marketers or recruiters start to measure like marketing teams do and measure multi-touch attribution and where they're having influence, it will never get adopted, right? And so I think we need the measurement and the tracking, and we need a shift in process.
What do you think the biggest challenge is when, because you even said about implementing different analytics, like you start getting pushback, let's say from leadership. So like, how do you kind of handle that, or even with your recruiting team? Like, wait a minute, why are we thinking this way? Like, what are some of those challenges people face?
Yeah, you absolutely need strong leadership who thinks like marketers. A lot of our customers have now started to add former marketers into the TA organization, and for about 75%.
What roles do they typically go into?
Either the ops and analytics, or they're leading like recruiting, right? Because candidate generation is demand generation.
Yeah.
So if you have someone who knows how to generate demand and inbound B2B leads, it's the exact same process, right? For others where they're still separate and employer branding might sit under marketing still, I say to them, just become best friends with marketing and ask them to leverage your pixels. They're using pixels to track their B2B leads. Ask them for pixels to track, leads to your career site, right? So there's ways to do it. You can ask them for access to Google Analytics so you could see like who's landing on your career site, where are they coming from, right? So there's very simple ways you can do it, and then there's much more sophisticated ways where now we have a lot of buyers investing in CRM. So they have now shifted the mindset of their recruiters to say, hey, instead of outbound sourcing on LinkedIn to cold candidate, we are investing in employer branding. We're bringing all these candidates inbound. We're putting them in our CRM. Go source out of the CRM, run recruitment marketing campaigns, nurture them within the CRM. So I do see the future of sourcing for the hardest to fill roles happening in this regard. Like, someone has to have awareness of your company. Your response rates are way higher, and we have some clients who have great statistics on it.
What about from like a community building standpoint? Like, you build community, talent pool, I guess, like what's effective in building that? And like, I guess even from like tech talent, which I feel like are really, really hard to engage with. What kind of content are you putting out there, right? You're not just saying, hey, jobs. Like, what's the most valuable type of content people need to be thinking about?
Honestly, it's like meeting people where they're at, right? So if someone's like actively job seeking, they are going to be interested in salary information, your culture, right? They're going to be interested in benefits. They're going to be interested in your tech stack and what you're working on, right? For sure. But you have to know they're actively looking, and that's sort of more bottom of funnel. When they're top of funnel and they've just experienced some interest in your content or your company, right? That's where I would lean in heavily to like, who is your company? What are you building? Like, what's your mission? What are your values, right? And then you can start to see and you nurture them, right? I always go back to B2B and demand gen, right? Of how my marketing team drives leads. We get leads all the time. Some are not ready to buy today, so we nurture them with content. And then one day if they're ready to buy, awesome, we'll hand them over to our sales reps. Same concept. Like, hey, not all candidates are created equal. They may signify interest and they may be willing to have a conversation, but they're not like actively going to move today, but nurture them, engage with them. And then when they're ready, you will be top of mind and you'll have a shot, right? Versus outbound sourcing, when you need a candidate, it's one, super reactive. Two, if you really have no brand in the marketplace, like it's going to be way harder for you to get a response, right? And so we just need to be an always on. Like I always say, like hotels, travel is very seasonal, but they're not turning on and off their brand spend. Why are we doing that? Like why are TA teams turning their brand spend on and off tied to their hiring? You can't do it that way. You're always going to be behind the eight ball. You have to have this like constant drumbeat in the market, especially for your hardest to fill roles.
Well, I guess what are some like cool ways and creative ways that you've seen people engage a talent pool, and what are some maybe the things to like avoid to start thinking? Because I feel like I see a lot of like talent communities. Like I applied to jobs where I still get emails from 10 years ago, and it's like, hey, you've joined this community. I'm like, it's just jobs. You keep sending me jobs. So like, what are some more creative things that you've seen, or like ways you've seen clients engage?
I don't know if I've seen the most creative, but I will say the most strategic has been the ones that know when you're active versus not and send you the relevant content that you're interested in. So like if you're a Java developer, right, and they have published a cool piece of content, like that's relevant to you, right? Like you would actually read it. So it's like I always say, like, don't just be a salesperson, right? Like you don't always need to be selling these candidates something, but like inform them, give them something to learn. Maybe you're found a skill that they should gain that's beneficial to them in their career. Like do the give before you get almost. So like don't just send them your jobs and assume they're going to apply, but give them something of value, right? Like I always say, like as our business has evolved, we do a lot of content. I always say give before you get.
I love that.
You know, and I think if everyone could approach candidate generation that way, they'd be way better off and they would create really robust talent pipelines.
I know you've recently, or it seems like recently, gone global. So like what kind of sparked that change? Like what are you seeing globally too? Are we seeing the same things that candidates are desiring? Is there a difference? And like how do you kind of approach employer brand even globally versus locally?
It's a big challenge and a massive opportunity at the same time, right? So 90% of our enterprise buyers are hiring globally outside of the US and accelerating hiring outside of the US. 50% of our mid-market are as well. And this downturn in tech has like just accelerated this trend.
And is this tech talent? Like what type of talent?
You'd be surprised. So mostly it started with the tech talent, and so engineers, data scientists, AI, et cetera. It's now evolved into people building full capabilities abroad, adding finance teams, accounting teams, and almost building different offices across different locations. Why? One, from a tech standpoint, India will eclipse the US in terms of engineering talent in the next few years. I think the CEO of GitHub said by 2027. I think it could be sooner, frankly, but 2027 is probably where it's going to hit really hard. We don't have enough talent here to meet the demand because every company is becoming a tech company and continues to move in this direction. And everyone is struggling to find the right talent. And so they're taking it abroad. The second biggest reason, specifically for mid-market, but also for some enterprise buyers, is cost. I think eventually that will change because it's getting even more and more competitive in international markets. And so I do think the cost will start to come up a bit. It won't be as cheap as maybe it is today in certain geos. But for our business, it was really to support our global buyers who had recruitment needs globally at this point. So they can't find the talent they need in the US. And so they're having to go internationally. Plus they're selling internationally. So they have to be where their customers are at, just like we will have to. So that was a big part of it. How we're supporting, here's the deal, right? Employer brand is still fairly nascent, right? Like it's still new and not everyone has built major teams around it. Historically, you had the employer brand leader sitting in the US really mostly supporting the US, and each international market was sort of left with not a lot to offer. We have a huge content creation and a pool, or a content creation platform, where we create a lot of international content opportunities for customers. So for very small teams, it's really an awesome and efficient way to create a lot of content to help drive some top of funnel talent inbound in various global markets, which they just didn't have access to before. So it's serving a really big pain point, especially for teams that are like, we don't even know where to start, but like we're opening up an office in India or we're opening up an office in London, and help, right? So similar to our clients who are headquartered outside the US, who typically were their first call when they come into the US, like, hey, we need to tap into this talent pool. How do you make us known, build a brand so we can recruit talent? We're now seeing almost the reverse take hold for companies headquartered in the US who are hiring international.
Is it kind of similar content, leading with value? 'Cause I'm hearing a lot like leading with value, giving value.
Yeah, for the customers, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And so we help them create content that's specific to benefits that they may provide. We have content that's very specific to technology they're building. We have cultural content. We have location-based content if they really want to work in a certain city. So there's various content opportunities. And then we have brand content where they can profile their teams on the ground in all these different markets, right? And actually profile the people. Because at the end of the day, you want to know who you're working with.
Yeah.
So you can't have a US-based team that you're promoting to a market like Delhi, right? They're going to be like, well, that's not the team I'm working with. So that's not hopeful. So really our goal is to support, profiling teams, culture, any kind of news on the company, anything that helps to brand them and differentiate them in that geography. And, country by country, even city by city within some of the larger countries is really different.
Yeah, I love what you said too earlier about you're like, if you, like for D&I, for example, like if you got issues, like don't lead into that or don't like fake it, right? Or, like, and you got to be authentic.
Yeah.
How much do you think it is just looking at like really asking like, even just current employees, like why is it that you want to work here? And like, I guess how do you create for your clients a space where people can be authentic? Because I think this is a big issue. Like I know anytime I've done a career video, it's always like, oh, cameras in my face. Like I'm not necessarily being myself because I think cameras can do that.
Yeah.
It's like, how do you create that space where it's like, all right, we're getting in here of like, this is really why people want to work here?
Yeah, I think a lot of our clients are starting to do more like impromptu real videos.
Yeah.
Where like employees are just videotaping themselves and it's raw and it's not formal. And I think people are seeing some success there. I think not every employee wants to do that, frankly, and that's hard. We help them with content mostly, and so short form and long form, and we tend to do it around profiling the work they're doing. And I think that's what sometimes people don't focus on. It's like, especially tech candidates, like, yes, they care. Of course they care. They want to know if the workplace is dirty. What gets them excited is the work, right? And like, what's the impact they're going to have? And, when you go to the international markets, it's like, are we working on the core product or is this like the back office, right? So there's certain like angles that you can take that like really help attract the tech candidates a little bit better. Now you also have markets where like literally salary is the number one thing that drives them. They don't care about
Are we seeing more
else.
of an increase of that in the US, do you think?
I don't think in the US as much so. It's like a market like India where salary is like really important and like the number one thing. And they love the Western brands, right? And so the more though that Western brands go over to a market like India, the more competitive it's getting.
Yeah.
And brand matters. And they want to know, like, are you stable? I think this downturn has also freaked people out. And so they do care about stability. And they want to make sure that like they're not going to get laid off the next day. And so you're seeing a lot of that as well. But again, it varies by market.
What's your big bet for the talent industry in 2025?
One, I think you're going to see continued acceleration to hiring outside the US in all markets. And two, I think you're going to see the rise of the CRMs. I think CRMs are starting to replace ATSs or start to be used more because of this whole shift. Recruitment is marketing. The CRMs are functioning more for this environment that we're in today, right? Where they can nurture candidates, run campaigns and then sort them easily, get analytics, et cetera. So I think it's going to take a couple of years for everyone to be there, but we're seeing an acceleration of companies investing there.
Now, do you have resources that people, like a recruiter, for example, they want to understand more about this, or a leader, like you've got resources that can kind of guide on how you need to think as a marketer?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously, builtin.com, our website, we have a ton of content catered, obviously, our audience, our HR and tech professionals and TA professionals. And so we have a lot of content under our For Employers tab. We have an entire site. We do a ton of webinars and thought leadership content that we release. We'll release the presentation I did today. And so, and I've already gotten requested a number of times today, can you please send me this deck? I'd love to educate, my boss or, our CFO or et cetera. So we will be distributing more and more content. So definitely follow us and join the built-in community.
Video right now is popping on LinkedIn. So the more video, the better, I say.
Yeah.
Well, everybody, I appreciate everybody tuning in. This is the last interview here.
Yeah.
So
awesome. Thank you.
it's been amazing. RecFest USA with Built-in. We've had some wind, some rain, but it's good. It's in the talent community.
No one
We're
cared.
resilient.
Yeah.
No one cared. We'll be back with an episode 2 in the next week. Maria, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And for any of you guys who are out there, remember to, if you do connect with Maria, just be patient. And she's not on LinkedIn all day like me, but appreciate all of you guys, and we will talk soon. Signing out from RecFest USA 2024. All right, welcome to Recruiting is No Joke. I am your host, Joel Lalgee. We are live at RecFest USA, and I am proud to be at the Built-in booth. I got a fantastic guest. We're going to be talking everything employer brand. So why don't you give the audience a quick intro, who you are and what you do?
Sure. So I am Golden Hippo's Senior Manager of Employer Brand and People Experience.
That's awesome.
So everything from when they first hear about our companies all the way through the people experience. Think of like the mentorship program, learning and development. I oversee that with my team of 4.
Tannum, how long have you been in employer branding for?
It's not a linear journey. I don't think anyone in employer branding has a linear journey. True employer branding I've been doing for about 4 years, but I've been at the company for about 7. So I started on the consumer side, like the product side, and I worked my way over to employer branding.
Also, and what does Golden Hippo do?
Yes, that's a great question. So Golden Hippo is a direct-to-consumer marketing company.
Okay.
So we don't have any products associated to the Golden Hippo brand, and instead Golden Hippo creates over 25 health and wellness brands.
Oh,
so
wow.
think like probiotics, protein powders, freeze-dried dog food even as well.
Yep.
And then skincare too.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, I guess there's a lot of crossover then with employer brand and even like what the business does. Talk to me about employer brand. I think, in my mind, things are changing. The way that people are approaching the job search, looking for jobs is changing. So talk to me about how much employer brand is impacting like recruitment and talent, and like how you've seen that evolution even at your time with Golden Hippo.
Yeah, so when I first started at Golden Hippo, there was no employer brand function. So I essentially created that function because we had such a need for it.
Okay.
I actually was first approached by one of our executives at Golden Hippo. He literally said, he's like, hey, we're trying to hire and we don't have an online presence and people think we're a scam when we reach out about these jobs.
Golden Hippo.
Yes, yeah. So employer brand, that's what I was given this opportunity to build our LinkedIn page, build our Instagram, build out our career site. So it turned into not just like a nice to have, but we have to have an employer brand. We have to have this online presence. And especially like fast forward to 2024, looking into 2025, if a candidate is presented like 2 opportunities that are similar jobs, similar compensation, but one has a strong employer brand and the other doesn't, they're going to go with that strong employer brand. Like at this point, you have to have it.
Yeah. So you mentioned the leaders at Golden Hippo, they wanted to do this. Like what advice do you have? And I hear this struggle all the time from TA. I mean, pretty much TA, employer brand. Like how do you get leadership on board with ROI?
It's an uphill battle. But some advice I have for those who are trying to get that executive leadership buy-in, you have to speak their language. And I think it might sound a little bit cliche. At least for me personally as an employer brander, I think in, graphic design terms, marketing terms, I'm thinking that way. Data, for me at least, is not a natural first thought, but it's a natural first thought for our leaders, our leadership team. They are so data-driven. So what I had to do to prove that employer branding was worth that investment, like this is why we have to have it, I had to gather that data and I had to dissect it and translate it in a way that they understood and it made sense to them. So my advice, do the work, gather that data, and then, come 6 months, you can go back to your leadership team like, this is what I've been doing, here's the proof.
Yeah.
Look at these numbers. Look at our application rate, our reduction in time to fill. It's working.
I love that.
Yeah.
I know Maria earlier, she was talking in her session about how like recruitment is marketing. That was, that skill set shifting. And I know from a TA perspective, we're always talking about telling the story with data. So for you, like what are the data points you're looking at? Like how do you get that? Do you have a dashboard? Like how are you measuring this?
Yeah, got a whole dashboard. It's like a pretty big Excel sheet.
And you built this yourself?
Built it myself. Yeah. And it's been refined along the way so many times, but we're actually at a pretty good point with that right now. So it's a mixture of social media metric. Initially in the very beginning, it was all just social media metrics.
Like impressions, engagement.
Totally.
Yeah.
Followers. Yeah, absolutely. But as we've started to grow our employer brand and invest in our team, we do have those data points, but now it's really shifting into recruiting metrics. And that goes back to your point of recruiting is marketing. Employer brand has a direct tie-in in that time to fill rate. And we've seen ours plummet because of our investment in employer brand. And then of course, application rate, but not just the application rate, but like how many of those applicants move on and get to our, different layers of our recruiting process. So we measure that very, very closely as well.
What are some of the major mistakes that you're seeing? I guess don't want to badmouth people, but and you don't need to name exactly who they are, but what are some mistakes you think employer branding makes as a whole that's not really helping its case at a business level, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I mean, I'm the first one to say I've made mistakes. I've made plenty of mistakes along the way. So there are a lot of mistakes I can mention, but one that really comes to mind is like the disconnect of the entire employee journey. So now that I oversee the people experience side of things as well, from the employer brand side, if we're marketing and promising these promises to these candidates, like come to Golden Hippo, you're going to experience X, Y, and Z. But once they do make it through that recruiting funnel, if they do get hired and if they become an employee, if they're not experiencing those promises, what are you doing it for? It's all for nothing. So to connect that entire employee journey to ensure that the promises you're making are in fact genuine and authentic.
I think this happens all the time in recruiting in general, where we're kind of taught, a lot of recruiters fall into the industry, right, on the agency side, and it's almost a sales job. So you're selling people, and I think that combined with employer branding, if you have employer branding that's painting a picture that's not existing, then you got the recruiter kind of doing the same thing, it kind of ends up. So I guess how do you kind of measure, or how do you not measure, but like how do you track like that authenticity piece, like to keep it authentic?
Yeah, we are big on surveys, but to a point where we try not to over-survey our candidates and our employees, but that is how we measure that impact. So we recently launched candidate surveys. So once they meet with the hiring team, recruiters, we then survey them to ensure that, that experience is seamless and it is aligned with what we're preaching, essentially. And then, of course, we measure the employee experience to ensure that come 6 months, come 6 years, they're still experiencing what we had promised them not long ago.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, and I think you recruit people in that way, you're marketing them in that way. What about this whole idea of, like you kind of mentioned something where like you're wanting to grow the brand, so you got followers and impressions. I know as being a content creator, that doesn't always equate to conversions, or it doesn't necessarily even create, people are actually following you. So advice for people to kind of keep the brand authentic, and like, what are the talking points that you have for that from a marketing standpoint, if that makes sense?
Yeah, so when I first started in employer branding, I was keeping such a close track of like our follower rate, engagement rate, and I would get like personally offended if a post that I had put out and created didn't get the content and the engagement that I was experiencing or hoping for. So I was like so closely tied to those numbers. But really, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how many followers you have on LinkedIn. It doesn't matter how many people like to post. It's the end journey. How many people have applied, maybe since you published that post, that made it through and got hired? That's like the success story, in my opinion. Yes, of course, like follower rate, engagement rate, it matters, and it helps us as content creators to decide what's working, what's not working.
What's resonating.
Yeah, exactly. But ultimately, really, it's about that end goal, not just the little, data points along the way, in my opinion.
I love it. And I think that's huge too, because anyone who isn't creating content or trying to build a brand, I think that's the first place that like leaders in the business, for example, they're going to look at those things, but it's like, all right, what's the actual quality here? So AI, talked about AI a ton, and anyone at RecFest USA has a lot of talk around AI, obviously, but from an employer branding standpoint, like what are you excited about with AI? Like what tools are you looking into? Yeah, what are you excited about, like that's past the hype?
Yeah, so I am a big proponent of AI, but I'm also the first to say I don't think it'll ever replace what we do. There is no world, I think, where that happens. But what I'm so excited for is the streamlining and like the efficiency that it's going to give us. And I think a lot of employer branders can speak to this. We have lean teams and we have not a ton of resources, not a ton of budget to work with. So when there are free platforms, of course there's paid AI and there's free AI as well. But when you're given these resources, like the world opens up. it's like having an extension of your team. So to automate candidate communications, that's like a huge thing. I will like die on this hill. Like in my opinion,
so like the chatbots that are interacting and
chatbots, but then also setting up workflows. So once a candidate applies, in my opinion, because of AI, there's no excuse for ghosting candidates anymore.
Yeah.
You can communicate with them automatically. So we have a system set up where those candidates do go on that journey automatically.
I love that.
So yeah, exactly. And then something else I'm really excited about on the AI front is like the hyper personalization that we're going to be able to give our candidates, because I think we're kind of getting to a point where these cookie cutter job postings and job descriptions, it's not going to cut it and it's not going to move that needle, in my opinion. So with AI, you're able to like really, really personalize that experience. So I'm very much looking forward to that.
I mean, I think there's going to be aspects like of recruiting, obviously, that do get replaced. Someone made a really great point as like a lot of these tools are new.
Yeah.
And so then if everybody has the tools, then it kind of takes away from like almost like the power of these things. So I guess what are some things that you would look at as like to be wary of AI when it comes to employer branding? Like what are some easy pitfalls people can make?
First word I think of that you mentioned earlier is like that authenticity and like genuine experience. AI is not going to be able to replace our employees' stories. Like, and at the end of the day, employer branding is storytelling and empowering our employees to share their story.
Why do you think companies find it so hard to like actually for that to happen?
I don't know. And it's truly just a matter of asking, like giving your employees a platform to do so.
Do you think it's fear there still with like, I think of like the layoffs, you know, people recording their layoffs, for example, on TikTok. I think there's fear around it. Yeah.
That is something I'm aware of. I do think like, and going back to layoffs, but also people talking about their candidate experience. Like, I was ghosted from this company. People are posting that on LinkedIn.
Recruiting hell, if you read it.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I have been very deep on that Reddit before. And I always get scared. I'm going to see like an
I see my posts on there all the time.
Seriously.
So, yeah.
Oh, whoa. Well, it's wild.
I shouldn't admit that. But,
but yeah, so because employees and candidates alike have that platform, like it does really matter what you are putting out there as an employer brander.
What are you doing for that? Like telling the stories, what's your strategy for that? I think we were talking about this a little bit earlier. What is it that you do and like how is that working?
Yeah.
And how you get employees like involved to where they're like authentic and like actually kind of have that freedom to be themselves, like comfortable with it?
Yeah, so something I like really, really try and do is just establish like friendly relationships with all of our employees. And luckily I'm able to do that. We're like a mid-sized company. So really establishing those like thoughtful relationships. So I'm not just approaching people out of the blue I've never met before. Like, hey,
come do a
this.
selfie.
Yeah, exactly. That's so awkward. So doing that, but then also really tailoring our strategies to like what our employees would feel comfortable doing. So we were talking about this. This is a podcast, but we host a podcast at Golden Hippo where our employees, we ask them if they want to be, hey, you have a great Golden Hippo story. Do you want to be on this podcast and share it?
I love that.
Yeah.
And you host this?
I host it. I edit it. So like, I'm not an editor. Please don't hate me. I was presented with this opportunity. Instantly, I was like, that is so out of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
But we've done it for over a year now, and it has become, I've actually never asked really, like, well, I did ask employees in the beginning to be a part of it, but it's become this like snowball
People want to
effect.
be involved in it.
They want to be on a podcast.
Yeah,
it's
that's
so
cool.
neat. Like this right here is like so cool. It's amazing.
I think what I love about that is it's organic, right? And I think this is a struggle that I've always had when I think of employer branding is, you know, like career videos, right? Like, because anytime I've been involved in career videos, it's like, say this and like I gotta say things, but I think if you're able to give people that like organic, they want to be involved, they're really able to tell their story, they're able to be, I actually love the idea of like audio as well compared to just video, because I think video, I'm a huge proponent of video, but there is something about a camera for most people, which I think is changing, but for a lot of people that's like.
But going back to your point about video versus audio, our employees, at least when we first presented the idea of like a video-based podcast or, you know, YouTube video, it's I would at least, you kind of instantly go back into your shell. I don't want to be on video. I'd have to do my hair, makeup, like that's awkward. And if you're an employee who's very much behind the scenes, that's so out of your comfort zone. But audio, much easier. And this is so embarrassing. I edit this podcast on iMovie.
Really?
The free application on a Mac.
Yeah, so it's like the quality, it's It's
Doesn't
good.
matter.
Yeah. It's authentic.
Yeah, exactly.
What about when it comes to recruiting then? Like how you tie that into recruiting?
Yes. So with our new career site, we're able to take that audio and post it on our careers template. So for example, we recently had a senior video editor on the podcast. So when we have video editor jobs that open, we include that podcast on that job template. So again, that hyper personalization, like this is what a video editor would want to hear. And then we include it throughout our candidate communications. You know, as they're getting ready for an interview, we share what this person who went through that experience, they have advice for you. Listen to this podcast. Yeah.
So kind of wrapping up here, where is the best place that people can find out about you, what you're doing, Golden Hippo? Like where can people go? Are you active on LinkedIn?
I am active on LinkedIn.
Yes.
Again, a little bit out of my comfort zone, but it's given me opportunities like this. Like if I weren't posting on LinkedIn, this wouldn't have happened, I don't think. So LinkedIn and then goldenhippo.com. That's our career site.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, Tannum, thanks so much for joining us in this tropical storm that we're having. We're going to have lots more interviews, a lot more content to come. So go check out Golden Hippo. Thank you to Built In for the booth and RecFest USA. We are having a blast here. Lots of fun.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah,
Thank you for having me.
Great to meet you too. Thank you. Welcome to Recruiting is No Joke Live. We are here at RecFest USA. We're with Built In. So thank you so much, Built In, for hosting. I have another amazing guest. Celinda, why don't you tell us who you are and what you do?
Sure. First of all, thank you so much for having me. My name is Celinda Appleby. I'm the Director of Global Talent Attraction and recently acquired branding here from Portland. Excited to be at RecFest today with you.
And what company do you work for?
Oh, I forgot. I'm with Visa.
I love it. I love it. Well, I heard you speak earlier. You were talking about the future of recruitment marketing, which I think is extremely relevant. What are the topics that you've been most excited about? What have you heard? Anything like really caught your eye that you're really excited about?
You know, I'm so impressed that there's so much recruitment marketing content. It really just makes me feel good because I've been doing this work for 16 years and it didn't even used to have a name for what we did, you know? And so to see so much discipline behind it, so many people actually having great success, and all the tools that have been popping up to support recruitment marketing have been really something I've been excited about. Things that I'm hearing, I love the top of mind of AI. I'm a huge proponent of using Gen AI to simplify your workflow. Yeah. And I use it a lot in my day-to-day. So hearing how other people are using it or, you know, different point of views, like my stage mate today felt like AI was a little bit more scary for her, you know, so learning to hear other people's point of views is always a good thing.
What's your favorite use case? You're talking about workflow, right? So like, give us an example of that.
So I've recently been hosting a lot of focus groups as part of our EVP refresh work, and I use Copilot, and I literally will say, like, build me out an executive summary, the email comms, the calendar invite, and Copilot searches your whole desktop and produces all of that. That kind of stuff, because I'm not an administrator by heart or like by trade, used to take me hours. And so to be able to just take a draft and clean it up has been like life-saving for me.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's, I mean, for most people, I think it is figuring out what the workflow is, where can we save some time. I'm curious to hear I'm always curious to hear what the other use cases are, because I hear a lot about like transcription, summaries.
The other thing that we've been using it for, I built out a prompt sheet for our talent acquisition team. So you can go in and put your job description and have it be better. Like they can, you know, Gen AI, we have a Visa version of ChatGPT, can make the job description more sellable, if you will. Also, we help them write all of their LinkedIn posts using ChatGPT. So one of my favorite prompts is like thinking like a software engineer, write me a LinkedIn post that you would want to read. And honestly, the conversion rates, the engagements have been much better than when a human writes it. At least at Visa, like things I've seen at work.
What are some of the biggest mistakes that you see with employer brand? Like what are some of the things, and even using the example of like with AI, like what are some of those pitfalls?
I think that the biggest mistake I see right now is that people are selling one thing but really are another. Yeah. You know, I think in a world where we're so connected to social media and there's so much content available to do research, we're putting candidates in a place where they have to go to multiple places to figure out where to be. So a good employer brand has a career site, their own content. They have partners like built in to continue to tell the story. Because if you allow Google to be the place where people find information, you can't curate all of that on your own.
Yeah. What about, and I think of employer brand, I always think the challenge of being authentic is real. So like you're obviously with a big brand, Visa, we all know Visa. Like how do you keep that authenticity?
There's a balance of who Visa wants to be. We're like I shared earlier, we're in high growth moment. We have a new company strategy, new company brand position, new CEO. And with a lot of change comes a lot of aspirational feeling.
Yeah.
And then there's also, we have people that have been there for a long time, 20, 30, 40 years. We have great retention. So marrying the two feelings is a challenge. And I think there's a light balance work. You have to be aspirational to attract the people that you want to take your company, but you can't ignore the voices inside because then you lose authenticity.
And then how do you balance this? I mean, you were just saying like creating that image of, hey, we're this place, and then people go through the recruitment process and maybe they told similar things.
Right.
And then day one.
So what I've been doing now, because like I said, I'm in the middle of a refresh, so we're obviously we've heard that the EVP needs to evolve, our employer brand needs to evolve, and we're doing research. So it's a three-pronged strategy. We're doing internal, external, and then focus groups to close it out. And that's just getting the stories from the employees, right? How does this resonate with you? How do you feel? What about Visa is a great place to be?
Yeah.
And then taking that research up against with the leadership team, we're not there yet. But marrying those two is going to be the challenging part, or probably the part I'm most excited about, because that's when you get real, genuine recruitment marketing campaigns.
When you're, I guess, in focus groups or you're getting this content, this data together, how do you create that space where people can be honest about things, or how do you kind of weigh that?
We're keeping it very small.
Yep.
6 to 8 people's in the focus group. We're being very honest. It's anonymous. Your manager will not be told. You can opt in, opt out. I think when you allow people to not be a part of it, I think that also sort of creates a safe space. We're not recording anything. So whatever is said on camera or, in the room, in the team's room, won't be shared outside. I also think what's really important is going to different locations. So not our old EVPs focus on certain markets. I think we're in 300 countries. We need to go everywhere to learn what everybody thinks. And so we're definitely incorporating that this time around.
Yeah, I love that. What about leadership buy-in? This is a question.
Of course.
I feel like it's huge for TA. It's like
I feel like leadership buy-in tends to be the hardest part.
Yeah.
Because it does require you to feel comfortable and have confidence in yourself to go tell these people what they need to do. And that sometimes imposter syndrome gets to the best of us. I always say go with data, because to tell someone they need to do something, but you're not telling them the why and the how and showing them the real data, nobody's going to make that change because they think everything's okay. But if you're like, our time to fill is off, our retention numbers are off, and you see that in a beautiful slide. I know we're very big on PowerPoint.
Yeah.
The no's become resounding yeses when you have the data there.
And so with your dashboard, I asked someone this earlier, what are the key metrics that you're focused on? You said time
right
to
now,
fill.
yeah. Well, no, I don't focus on time to fill from me, but the talent acquisition organization does. For me, our talent attraction dashboard is focused on top of funnel activity. So what are sources, conversion from application to recruiter screen to interview, quality of application, quality of hire. We're still working on those. Those are wonky, numbers that we're playing with. And then it's always the look back, right? Because every quarter can look amazing or terrible, but if you're looking up against the past 2 years, you'll find lessons in the data alone there.
Yeah, I love that. And so the team you're on, what's the team structure?
So I report into the head of talent intelligence, candidate experience, and talent attraction.
Yeah.
I own talent attraction and branding, and then my peer owns talent intelligence, and then another peer owns the candidate experience.
Got it, but it's all tied together.
It's all part of one. Yeah, my boss owns that whole strategy. It's not a very big team. I have it's 2 of us on my team. I think Danny's got 3 and Chrissy's got 2. I think total 10 people doing this for all of these.
That is wild.
I know.
What about with one of the topics that's coming up a lot right now is video content. I know LinkedIn's pushing video pretty hard.
Such an appetite for video. It's been something that everybody wants to do. It's such an easy way to tell employee stories. It's relevant. I mean, I consume more video than written content. We've had a little bit of pushback from marketing over the past few months, years. We're getting closer and closer. I'm looking around for a video partner. I think that would be really helpful for us, and to remove the bias of us filming it and maybe making it easier if someone can pull the video from their own desktop. But that's something we probably will launch later next year. So don't look out for any video. No videos soon.
No, well, I know LinkedIn, they're pushing video super hard. I know we talked about.
Are you doing videos on LinkedIn?
Lots of, yeah. And the reach right now.
Is it good?
It's because they put a new video feed
in there.
Yeah,
I noticed the button on my mobile app.
Yeah, they've got the little feed, and then they're now introducing more of that For You page.
Yeah, you're right.
style where suggest videos to you.
Yeah.
And you mentioned marketing. I mean, is that usually where the pushback is coming in? Like how do you divide that line between?
We have a lot of stakeholders, and what I mean by that is obviously legal is always there. We're a very risk adverse company, which is great for your dollars, your money. But we have to go to comms and we have to go to marketing to ensure that the things we're doing are brand aligned. Over time, obviously, people trust me and the reviews get far less and less, but we still have to get approvals, at least run it by them.
Yeah, a lot of TA people obviously have just been having a tough time, right?
It's
and
so hard.
I think the job market is pretty tough right now.
Yes.
But employer brand, it seems like there's a lot of budgets getting cut in that space.
100%.
Thoughts on kind of like the future of employer branding? Like, is now a good time to get in?
Their jobs are so limited. People come to me, early career folks, like, I want to do what you did, or you do. And it's rare to find the jobs. We're so niche, right? It's one of the first things to get cut. And if they don't cut the headcount, they definitely cut the budget, right?
Yeah.
Especially when teams aren't hiring. If you're not hiring, do we need recruitment marketing? Do we need employer brand? I say you do, because it's not just for job security, but I think it just maintains that momentum because you will hire again. But I do think it's a good time to educate yourself and get yourself up to speed on all of the recruitment marketing and employer brand are changing so rapidly. And if you want to break into it, I have a feeling after the election year and what we figure out about the inflation and the economy, the job market will open up. I'm very optimistic about that. And I think that more jobs in my field will come about.
I think so. Even with like the rise of video and how people connect, I think more and more in the future, like that's how we're going to
video is going to be what candidates want, for sure.
Yeah. What about throughout the candidate experience, are you tracking, like how do you track like where people, obviously everyone knows visa, but like how do you kind of track that from like a job post or a perspective, or like the communities you're reaching into? Like
we've partnered with AppCast, basically tracks our media that we place with them all the way from application click through source, and they provide source attribution across the journey, which has been really helpful for us. But the other thing that we do is we recently launched an integrated search engine optimization and search engine marketing strategy, because we launched a new career page in January.
Yep.
And so this has been allowing us to really understand like time on page, where they're coming from, are they dropping off, how long, where are they dropping off, what content is resonating, and so forth.
What do you find, what's the content that resonates the most?
Honestly, it's our Life at pages. People really love going to, we never had them before. Now we have like 6 new Teams pages that talks about each department that's hiring. And those are the ones that people spend the most time on.
Amazing. I love that. What about, pitfalls that you're seeing when, not just when it comes to employer branding, but this like relationship between recruiters and employer branding?
I think the recruiters love me, and I'm not saying that because of anything, but I used to be a recruiter. That's how I started my career. So my job is always to make their job easier. And I realize that marketing isn't innate to a lot of people. And if you are a full cycle recruiter and you're doing offers and interviewing and screening, the first thing that'll fall off your plate is marketing.
Yeah.
And so I do my best to help our recruiters. I hate the word SharePoint, but we're a Microsoft shop, but we have a whole SharePoint dedicated to helping them be better at their job when it comes to the marketing piece.
I mean, you're in global markets. For people who are thinking about getting that global presence, which I think you had mentioned that, like everyone's going to be thinking global.
Yeah.
How do you keep the EVP similar locally and globally? Like how do you get
So I was in a meeting yesterday where someone used the word unique selling propositions, USPs, and I loved it. And the way that I'm going to take this back home is you have your global EVP, right? And that's the sentiment of the organization. And I usually like to do 80%, right? Serve the 80, right? As many as possible. And then underpinnings of that, you're going to have personas. And each of those personas are in your key hiring markets. And then you have your unique selling points. A technologist in Singapore will probably have different unique selling points. I don't even probably, I'm sure.
You're researching this.
Right. We'll work internally with our regional teams. We'll bring in our agency for support. It's going to be difficult. We have over 50 job codes, if you will. So I don't know if we would do a phased approach, let's say. But that's what I'm going to position it. Because I don't think the EVP tagline should change per country, but I think that the messaging will change underpinning that.
Yeah, I love that. big bet for the talent industry in 2025?
I think we need to be resilient. I think we need to be open-minded, and I think we need to lead with empathy more so than ever. A lot of our peers are still unemployed, budgets are going to be cut, and I think that is your opportunity to make yourself a subject matter expert in your role. And my big bets are that data will continue to power decisions, and the better we get at accessing and using data, the better, faster we'll grow in our careers.
And we had that prediction from the Magic 8 Ball about that was
a morbid way to start.
I know. I was like, okay, we're all gonna leave now. But
I was like, should we have lied?
you had a lot of people in that session as well, which I think is great.
It was so packed. Yeah, it was a great session. Yeah.
Where can people find out about you? Obviously, Visa.
I'm on LinkedIn, Celinda Appleby. I tweet occasionally, mostly about my roommates, which are my 16-year-old twin, and then employer branding and talent attraction. And then Visa is visa.com/careers. We have about 1,200 open roles. We're definitely hiring across the globe.
And then one last question. Who is your go-to, or what's the go-to source for you to learn about employer branding and to how to get better?
I love a good white paper.
Yeah.
I do. I really do love downloading it and reading it in the car while I'm waiting for my kids at baseball practice. And I recently have come across some great ones from, I think, I don't want to lie, but I feel like the Muse put one out recently.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So I do that, and I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. I love reading other people's posts and seeing what other people are up to.
I love it. Well, Celinda, thank you so much for coming down. You guys who haven't seen what's happening at RecFest USA right now, we got a lot of rain coming down. It's a storm, but we're out here because we're recruiters. So thank you so much. And when you guys connect, or if you send a connection request, I always just say be patient because, well, you said you're hanging out on LinkedIn a fair bit.
No, send me a connection.
Right, there we have it.
We don't say open networker anymore, but remember those
days?
Yeah.
It's still in my email.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I love connecting. Happy to take any questions offline.
I love it. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you, Built In, for hosting us. And we'll see you in the next interviews.